I want to tell you about something that happened on First Take this morning that genuinely caught me off guard. And look, I watch this show every single day. I have seen every version of Stephen A. Smith there is to see. I have seen him yell. I have seen him laugh. I have seen him do that thing where he leans back in his chair and points at the camera like he is about to deliver a sermon. I have seen every iteration of this man on live television. But what I saw today was something different. Something I have not seen in a very long time, and I need to walk you through it because what he revealed during the show has massive implications for the Las Vegas Raiders and their entire offensive rebuild heading into the 2026 season. So here's how it started. The first segment of the show was pretty standard stuff. Stephen A. and Shannon Sharpe were going back and forth about which teams in the NFL still have the most glaring roster holes heading into the draft. And naturally, the conversation drifted toward the AFC West, because that division right now is one of the most fascinating in football. You have the Chiefs still sitting there as the gold standard. You have the Broncos, who just went out and got Jalen Waddle in a trade. You have the Chargers with Justin Herbert and Mike McDaniel now running the offense. And then you have the Raiders, who are sitting at number 1 overall, about to draft Fernando Mendoza, and trying to figure out how to build an entire infrastructure around this kid so he does not end up like every other number 1 quarterback who walks into a disaster and gets his career torpedoed before it even starts. Hey, what's up everyone? Real quick before we get into everything, that like button is literally what determines if this reaches hundreds or thousands of fans. Takes 1 second, but makes a huge impact on the channel's growth. Just smash that like button right now. It's the easiest thing you can do, but honestly, the biggest way to support this content. Every single like pushes this further, so hit it now. Shannon was making the point that the Raiders have done some good things this offseason. He brought up Tyler Linderbaum, who they signed to that massive deal, 3 years, $81 million, $60 million guaranteed. He mentioned the Jalen Naylor signing, 3 years, $35 million. He talked about Nakobe Dean and Key Walker on the defensive side. He talked about Kwity Paye, and his argument was that the Raiders are building from the inside out, which is the right way to do it. You protect your quarterback first, you give him a running game with Ashton Jeanty, you surround him with Brock Bowers at tight end, and then you fill in the skill positions as you go. Stephen A. was not disagreeing, but he kept coming back to one point. He said the Raiders still do not have enough weapons on the outside. He said Trey Tucker is a nice player, but he is not a number 1 receiver. He said Jalen Naylor is a solid signing, but he is a complementary piece, not a foundational one. And he said Jack Beck and Dante Thornton, while young and talented, both underperformed as rookies, and neither one has proven they can be a reliable target for a young quarterback who is going to need all the help he can get. And that was the conversation. That was the vibe. It was analytical, it was measured, it was 2 guys going back and forth about team building philosophy. And then Molly Karam said they were going to commercial break. Standard stuff. I did not think anything of it. I grabbed my phone, checked a couple notifications, waited for the show to come back, and when it did, I noticed something immediately. Stephen A. Smith's entire demeanor had changed. Now, I want you to understand what I mean by that, because this is important. This was not the Stephen A. who comes back from break with a big smile and a loud voice ready to debate the next topic. This was a completely different energy. He was sitting forward in his chair. His hands were folded in front of him on the desk. His jaw was set. His eyes were locked in. And there was this weight to the way he was sitting there, like a man who had just received a piece of information that he was still processing, like he was calibrating exactly how to deliver it. Shannon noticed it too. I could see it on Shannon's face. He kind of tilted his head slightly, like he was reading Stephen A.'s body language and trying to figure out what was going on. Molly looked over at Stephen A, and you could tell she was about to transition to the next topic, but Stephen A put his hand up slightly, not aggressively, not in a rude way, just this subtle gesture that said, "Hold on, I have something," and then he said it. He said, "Listen, during the break I made a phone call, and what I am about to share with you is going to change the conversation about the Las Vegas Raiders entirely." The studio went quiet, and I mean quiet. Not the kind of quiet where the production team is scrambling to catch up. The kind of quiet where everyone in the room recognizes that something real is about to happen. Shannon leaned back in his chair, Molly sat up straighter, and Stephen A started talking in that low, measured tone that he only uses when he is in full journalist mode. Not entertainer mode, not debate mode, journalist mode. He said that according to a source he trusts deeply, the Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers have been engaged in serious conversations about a trade involving wide receiver Quentin Johnston. Not preliminary conversations, not the kind of thing where a general manager calls another general manager and says, "Hey, would you ever consider moving this guy?" No, he said these are advanced talks, the kind of talks where both sides have discussed compensation frameworks. The kind of talks where contract details and roster implications have already been mapped out. The kind of talks that are heading toward a resolution, not away from one. And when he said the name Quentin Johnston, I felt something shift in the room, because this is not just any player. This is a former first-round pick, the 21st overall selection in the 2023 NFL Draft out of TCU, a player who was supposed to be the Chargers franchise wide receiver. A player who, despite never quite living up to that first-round billing, has shown enough flashes of elite talent to make teams believe that the ceiling is still there. We are talking about a 6'2", 208-pound receiver who ran a 4.50 40 at the Combine, a guy who posted a 40.5-inch vertical and a 134-inch broad jump. A guy who, even in a down year, managed 51 catches for 735 yards and 8 touchdowns in 2025. 8 touchdowns. That is tied for 11th in the entire NFL among wide receivers. And Stephen A. laid all of this out calmly. He was not yelling about it. He was not pounding the desk. He was speaking in this deliberate, almost cautious tone, like he understood the gravity of what he was saying, and he wanted to make sure every word landed exactly right. He talked about how the Chargers are in a position where they have to make a decision on Johnston's 5th-year option by May 1st. That option is projected to come in around $18 million. And with Ladd McConkey established as the clear number 1 receiver, with Trey Harris emerging as a potential number 2 after being drafted in the 2nd round, and with Mike McDaniel coming in as the new offensive coordinator with his own ideas about how the offense should look, Johnston has become the odd man out. The executives who drafted Johnston, Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley, are no longer in the building. Joe Ortiz, the current general manager, did not draft this kid. And as Stephen A. put it, there is a difference between believing in a player and being invested in a player. Ortiz believes in Johnston's talent, but he is not invested in Johnston's career the way the previous regime was. And then Stephen A. pivoted to the Raiders side of this equation, and this is where it got really interesting. He said the Raiders have been looking for exactly this type of player, not just any wide receiver. This specific type of wide receiver, a big-bodied, explosive downfield threat who can win at the catch point, who can create yards after the catch, and who has the kind of rare physical toolkit that you cannot coach. He said that Clint Kubiak and John Spytek have been vocal about wanting to add an outside X receiver to the offense. They said it at the Combine. They said it at the owners' meetings. They have been saying it all off-season, and when you look at the Raiders' current wide receiver room, you understand why. Right now, the Raiders have Trey Tucker, who is a slot guy and a speed merchant, but not an outside weapon. They have Jalen Naylor, who they just signed to a 3-year deal, and who is a solid complementary piece, but not a physical mismatch on the perimeter. They have Jack Beck, a 2nd-round pick from last year, who fits Kubiak's system better than most of the other receivers on the roster, but who is still raw. They have Dante Thornton Jr., one who started 8 games last season but had one of the most disappointing statistical seasons you will ever see from a guy who got that kind of opportunity. 30 targets, 10 catches, 135 yards, 0 touchdowns in 15 games. And look, I have talked about Thornton before on this channel. I know he is an incredible human being. I know he has elite athletic tools at 6'5", 215, running a 4.35 40, but the numbers do not lie. Teams figured out how to defend him. His route tree is limited. He struggles to get off press coverage. And as much as I am rooting for him personally, the reality is that there are real concerns inside the building about whether he can be a productive NFL wide receiver at this stage of his development. And this is exactly where Quentin Johnston fits into the picture. Johnston brings a physical profile that is similar to what the Raiders envisioned Thornton could be, but with more polish, more experience, and a higher baseline of production. Johnston has 3 years of NFL experience. He has caught 144 passes in his career. He has over 1,800 receiving yards. He has 18 career touchdowns, 16 of them receiving. He has shown the ability to make contested catches in traffic. He has shown the ability to create explosive plays down the field. And perhaps most importantly for the Raiders, he has shown a nose for the end zone that is rare for a receiver who has not had consistent high-level production. 8 touchdowns in each of the last 2 seasons, despite being in an offense where he was not the primary target. That is an elite trait. Shannon, to his credit, responded to all of this with the kind of thoughtful analysis that I have come to appreciate from him. He did not try to one-up Stephen A. He did not try to debate for the sake of debating. He sat there, nodded slowly, and then said something that I thought was incredibly insightful. He said, "Stephen A., the thing about Johnston going to Las Vegas is the pressure release valve." And he explained what he meant. In Los Angeles, Johnston was a first-round pick who was expected to be the guy. Every drop, every bad route, every quiet game was magnified because of where he was drafted and what was expected of him. In Las Vegas, he would not carry that burden. The Raiders are not asking him to be their franchise receiver. They are not asking him to be the #1 target. They have Brock Bowers for that. They have Jeanty coming out of the backfield. They have Naylor in the slot. What they need from Johnston is to be the big, physical outside presence who stretches the field vertically and creates space for everyone else. That is a much more manageable role. That is a role where Johnston's strengths, his size, his speed, his ability to win down the field, his yards after the catch ability can shine without his weaknesses being constantly exposed. And Shannon made another point that I thought was brilliant. He talked about Kyle Shanahan's coaching tree and how Clint Kubiak comes from that system. He said that system is designed to manufacture separation through scheme. It uses motion, it uses misdirection, it uses play action to get receivers open in space, rather than asking them to win one-on-one battles on every snap. And that is perfect for a guy like Johnston, who has been criticized for struggling to separate against man coverage. In this system, the scheme does a lot of the heavy lifting. The receiver does not have to win every rep at the line of scrimmage. The receiver has to be in the right spot at the right time and then use his physical tools to make plays after the catch. And Johnston's yards after catch numbers have been consistently solid. In 2025, he generated 223 yards after the catch. For a guy who only had 51 receptions, that is significant. That tells you he can be dangerous with the ball in his hands if you can just get it to him in space. I was sitting there watching this whole segment unfold, and I kept thinking about the implications of this move for the Raiders offense as a whole. Because it is not just about what Johnston does with the football, it is about what his presence does to the defense. When you put a 6'2" receiver with 4.5 speed on the outside, defenses have to account for that. They have to keep a safety over the top. They have to shade coverage toward that side of the field. And when they do that, everything else opens up. Brock Bowers gets more favorable matchups underneath. Jalen Naylor gets more room to work in the slot. Trey Tucker can use his speed on crossers and shallow routes without a safety sitting on top of him. And most importantly, Ashton Jeanty gets lighter boxes. Because right now, without a credible deep threat on the outside, teams are going to load up against the run. They are going to put 8 men in the box and dare the Raiders to throw the ball. And with a rookie quarterback in Fernando Mendoza, that is a scary proposition. But if you have Johnston stretching the field, suddenly defenses have to respect the deep ball. Suddenly they cannot commit that extra defender to the run game. Suddenly Jeanty has creases to hit and Mendoza has time to find his checkdowns. And look, I am not going to sit here and tell you that Quentin Johnston is a finished product. He is not. He still has issues with drops. In 2025, he was charged with 4 drops on the year, which does not sound like a lot, but when you consider his target volume and the fact that some of those drops came in critical moments, it adds up. His catch rate has hovered around 60% for most of his career, which is below average for a starting NFL wide receiver. His route tree, while improved from his rookie year, still has room to grow. He is not going to come in and immediately be Davante Adams. He is not going to come in and be a polished, complete receiver from day one. But here is the thing, the Raiders are not asking him to be that. They are asking him to be a high upside, physically dominant outside receiver who can develop within their system over the next 2 or 3 years while they build the rest of the roster around Mendoza. And when you frame it that way, the fit makes a ton of sense. Johnston is only 24 years old. He has shown year-over-year improvement in his career. He went from 38 catches and 431 yards as a rookie to 55 catches and 711 yards in year 2 to 51 catches and 735 yards in year 3, despite dealing with shin, hamstring, groin, and shoulder injuries in the second half of the season. The trajectory is there. The talent is there. The physical tools are there. What has been missing is the right environment, the right role, and the right system. And the Raiders, with Kubiak's scheme and the supporting cast they have assembled, might be able to provide exactly that.